Hi, this is Randal Schwartz, host of FLOSS Weekly. This week, Jonathan Bennett joins me. We're going to be talking about Opencast, a great way in academia to go from the lecturers all the way to the end users. You're not going to want to miss this, so stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is FLOSS Weekly with Randal Schwartz and Jonathan Bennett. Episode 512, recorded January 2nd, 2019. Opencast. This episode of FLOSS Weekly is brought to you by DigitalOcean, the easiest cloud platform to deploy, manage, and scale applications. Over 150,000 businesses rely on DigitalOcean to remove infrastructure friction and deliver industry-leading price performance. Sign up today and receive a free $100 credit at do.co/twit. And by IT Pro TV, interactive and flexible IT training your team will actually enjoy. Visit go.itpro.tv/floss and use the code FLOSS30 for 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscriptions. It's time for FLOSS Weekly, the show about free, libre, open source software. I am your host, Randal Schwartz, Merlin at Stonehenge.com, bringing you each week the movers, the shakers, the big projects, little projects, projects you may be using every day and not aware of it, projects you might want to download right after this show and play with, but not while you're in your car. Wait till you get home. I have a bit of a cold today, so if you hear me sneezing or coughing, sometimes I can't reach the mute switch quick enough, but we'll just have to put up with it because it's how I am today. Joining me once again is the lovely and talented co-host, Jonathan Bennett. Jonathan, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Randal, it's good to be here once again.
Yes, and you're moving this week, I understand, or have you already done that?
We're trying to move. So there are plumbers and cabinet guys over at the new house right now as we speak, trying to get it done. And just as soon as they get out of the way and we get it inspected, we're going to start moving stuff over. So yeah, this is the week, hopefully.
All right, good. And so we'll see the new digs on your next show, whenever that's going to be. And based on past experience, it might be next week.
It might be.
Oh yes, thanks for stepping up to this show. I know it's a difficult time because it's holidays or holiday recovery. So yeah. So this week, let me look at my notes here so I don't get it wrong. We're talking about the project Opencast. It's a flexible, scalable, and reliable video capture, distribution, and management system for academic institutions. Opencast is built by a growing community of developers in collaboration with leading universities and organizations worldwide. We have a couple of those collaborators and builders with us today. Lars, I'm going to mispronounce this, Lars Kiesow. He can fix me if I get it wrong. And Olaf Schulte. So I should usually try to ask them how they pronounce their names before their show, but we'll see. He'll correct me when we bring him on. But Lars is apparently a key member of the team. Definitely has been involved since the early beginning, according to his commits that I saw on the project. And so, what I think this is, because I haven't done video in academic situations before. I've done video in like a professional training situations, but not in academic situations. But it looks like, like you have a class, it's Tuesday at 4:00, and you want to build up a sequence of, that. And you don't want the instructor to have to remember to push the buttons, just say record it. You can set up schedules. So you can say Tuesday at 4:00, record, room 3. And that goes automatically into a queue, maybe for processing and things like that. But it looks like a really nice, mature project, and it's used worldwide. So some of the names of people that were using this is just amazing. And of course, it's all open source. So part of my questions are always going to be, well, how do you make money doing this? How do you fund yourself? But we'll get into that in the show. Jonathan, you want to say anything before you get started?
I do. Just looking at it, I think it's really interesting that they're making kind of an open source host it yourself version of almost YouTube, which is really neat. YouTube is great and all, but of course it's closed source and it's funded by ads. And I know that there's a problem every once in a while where people put content up on YouTube with no control over what ad is going to be shown before it. And that could be a kind of almost a conflict of interest. So it's neat to see some open source alternatives to the big cloud companies that we see right now, like YouTube, and of course Microsoft is trying to get into that with some of their things, and Twitch, of course. So yeah, it's definitely something that there is space for in the open source world. I'm looking forward to learning more about it.
And one of the things I was impressed by looking over the website is just how not only how mature it is, but also how comprehensive it is. I mean, all the way from scheduling the recordings, all the way down to, actually grabbing the stream, broadcasting the stream if needed, and then doing video manipulation on that. So this is going to be fun. It looks like VLC on steroids for one of the pieces of it. So we'll see how well that comes out. But before we do that, I do have a very important message because this episode of Floss Weekly is brought to you by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean provides the easiest cloud platform to deploy, manage, and scale applications with Droplets, virtual machines that are a scalable compute platform with add-on storage, security, and monitoring capabilities. You can choose from standard or CPU-optimized Droplets and customize from there. DigitalOcean is designed for developers. The easy-to-use control panel and API let developers spend more time coding and less time managing their infrastructure. Industry-leading price to performance. Access the compute resources you want at the lowest rates, saving up to 55% compared to other cloud providers. And you'll always know what you pay per month with a flat pricing structure across all data center regions. Included at no additional cost. 99.99% uptime SLA, cloud firewalls, monitoring and alerting, full DNS management, global data centers, enterprise SSDs, and an easy-to-use API. Over 150,000 businesses, including some of the world's fastest-growing startups, rely on DigitalOcean to remove infrastructure friction and deliver industry-leading price performance. Stonehenge.com also has an account there, so I'm a happy customer as well. Sign up today and receive a free $100 credit at do.co/twit. That's do.co/TWIT for a free $100 credit. And we thank DigitalOcean for their support of Floss Weekly. Now let's go ahead and bring on our guests. Lars, welcome to the show.
Hi, Randal. So I'm joining here from Ostenburg in Western Germany. Nice to be on the show.
Did I mangle your name badly, or was I close?
I think it's really unpronounceable for anyone out of Germany. In fact, I think it's unpronounceable for anyone in West Germany as well. So a lot of people around here don't get it right, because the W at the end is, you could just leave that away, and that would make the name more accurate. And so it's Kiesow.
Kiesow. Something like that, close to that? Maybe not. All right, well, whatever. Hey, Lars, welcome to the show. And we'll also be joined now by Olaf Schulte. Olaf, welcome to the show.
Randal, thanks for having me.
And where are you speaking to us from?
I'm usually working in Switzerland at ETH Zurich, but I'm on holidays right now in Germany.
Cool. All right. Well, both of you, welcome to the show. Let's start with sort of the general question. What problem are people solving when they're reaching for Opencast? Lars, you can take that one.
I think you covered it quite well. So it's really not something which an end user would use. Well, it is something an end user would use, but not set up. It's something an academic institution, mostly at least academic institutions, would set up to handle all of the video recordings. And in a way, it's a little bit like a teeny tiny little YouTube for one institution. Though teeny tiny, it doesn't always fit it quite well, because if we are looking at some of the larger institutions, we're actually looking at somewhat around 70,000 to more than 100,000 videos they are managing, but there are also very small ones.
Wow. So talk about the major components. I think I hit a couple of them, but can you tell me sort of what's in the box?
So the idea is mainly to have a processing and distribution channel, which is more or less, if you want to, completely automated. So let's say you're a university. That's the most common case. So you have all these lecture halls and all the lecturers doing the regular lectures, and you don't want to really disturb them with recording stuff. So what you build into your lecture halls is some kind of video capture device. And there are a bunch of different options for this. So there are a lot of vendors who actually interact with Opencast. So you can just go out, grab one of their solutions and put it into the lecture hall. But you can also build it yourself. In fact, there are a few free and open source software solutions around Opencast, which handles exactly this. So you can build your own hardware, which then captures your lecture. Then it automatically uploads this to Opencast, which is then the core system, which does things like, well, most importantly, process the video, so generate different qualities from this and stuff like that. There is a small video editor in the administrative tools, so you can cut stuff away, maybe the private conversations your lecturer had at the beginning of the recording. There's automatically a detection or a video analysis. For example, there is a slide detection. So usually if you have your standard PowerPoint slides, then Opencast would detect these slides, and you can later in the player jump to each and every slide separately. And it also does a little bit of text extraction, for example, on these slides, so you can search through your videos. And then finally, it does publish your video. And for publishing, we actually have a lot of different options. You can just use the internal media portal, though it's not a very sophisticated video portal. That's actually a project for like next year, I think. Oh, sorry, no, it's 2019 already, so it's a project for this year. But there's a small one in there, but you could also integrate into other systems. So a lot of universities actually integrate the system in their lecture management system. So I'm not sure if these names say anything. I know they do to me because I'm in the academic section of open source, but you can integrate it into Sakai or Canvas or Blackboard or Elias or Moodle. So that's most of the publications. And then finally, if you want to, you can actually automatically publish to YouTube. So that's still an option if you want to.
How long has this been around? It sounds like a lot of work has gone into it.
It's actually around for more or less exactly 10 years now.
Wow.
So I think Olaf can tell you a little bit more about that. I've been on there for, I think, about 8 years, but Olaf is one of the founding members. So he can tell you more about how this came around and how things started from the previous projects.
Yeah, so Olaf, go ahead and fill in the story here.
Yeah, it's actually our 10th anniversary in January this year, and it all started when UC Berkeley, back in the days, realized that universities would be facing the challenge of managing videos like anyone else is facing the challenge of managing a growing number of videos. And UC Berkeley at the time had some funding in order to investigate whether there are solutions out there to help academic institutions manage these videos with open source tools. And they realized that there were quite a number of projects, but that these efforts were sort of spread across the globe and across different institutions. And what they did with the funding is to actually try and contact each of these individual institutions who were working in the domain of video management at the time and see whether it was possible to actually build something together. And this is what they succeeded in. So basically there were around about a dozen institutions at the time who came to the table with their own solutions and then had to talk this through in a way of, well, who's going to build what for the common solution we then can share and sort of cooperate upon, which you can imagine is a bit of a difficult process because you also have to let go of some of the ideas you originally had with your own software. But in the end, and due to the fact that there was also some funding around, we actually were able to provide a first version of what used to be called Opencast Matterhorn around about 2009, 2010, which was to cover the lecture capture part, which is the the automated recording of lectures, obviously. Mm-hmm. And from that on, we further developed into not only the video management in general, so that's beyond the mere recording of lectures, but we also further developed from a funded project into a real open source project, which sort of was working upon the contributions of individual institutions. And that was a difficult phase, obviously. So around about 2012, we had to say goodbye to some of the funding we received earlier, and move on the basis of what we had from the, as I said, dozen or so institutions, and we then were able to gain some traction in various countries, and see that we're now, I would say, a vital community which has a number of contributing institutions and individuals, obviously. And moving on from there, we sort of were able to cover, I would say, the relevant requirements institutions have when it comes to video management. They are very similar, as you mentioned, to what YouTube does, and some of the expectations around video management come from video management, like it has been done or is being done by YouTube, which is hard to cover actually. But then there are things, and you mentioned this earlier, that YouTube doesn't do so well for academic institutions, like the fact that you're giving away intellectual property rights, for example, in that context of publishing your stuff there. And that's certainly something that bothers institutions, and this is why they invest into Opencast and into an open source software that solves a similar requirement, but does it in a different way.
Wow. Nice long answer there. I always appreciate that. It gives me a chance to rest my throat for a second and come up with the next question. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. You guys can keep doing that the entire show. I'll be very happy. It's not a problem. So what's sort of the minimum size use for this? Is this something that I could use if I just had, if I was just setting up? It sounds like there's a lot of infrastructure though, right? So it's probably, you don't have to be too small, right?
No. If you're publishing a couple of videos a week, then basically you're good to go with a one server installation, and this is where most institutions will start to get their feet wet. So Lars will tell you more about the technical side, obviously, but you can start on the basis of having a small server under the table and see where that gets you. And then you can further on as far as the number of recordings and the number of videos are concerned. And obviously you also have to scale the underlying infrastructure, but that can be done at no cost at all to your institution, except for the hardware, obviously. And that has been done. So many institutions, we started at around about 20 recordings a week, and we're now moving into around about 100 a week. And I think it's similar to many institutions I see using Opencast.
So you said at the beginning of the project you were funded under grants, and then eventually had to move to a more traditional open source methodology. How are you funded now? Is it because all these people work for all these universities, and so they get some of their time allocated to provide new features?
Yes, that's correct. So it's very much an institutional thing where institutions decided to invest in Opencast and use Opencast for strategic purposes, and they realized that their investment is the only way to make sure that this software continues to develop and is sort of a solution they can strategically depend upon. And this is why they, for example, like the University of Osnabrück and the Elan e.V., which is where Lars is coming from, where they're making it possible for Lars to contribute and commit towards Opencast. And this is something that a dozen or so institutions have been doing, or 20 or so institutions are doing now. And then there are obviously those who are sitting on the sidelines and helping us do the testing and taking care of the wiki and answering questions online, etc. So it's a number of ways in which various institutions are contributing to this software. There's almost no money involved. So there are a couple of institutions who have decided to fund specific tasks within the Opencast community. But we're talking about sort of a very restricted budget we're working on. So currently we have one person actually sitting on that budget, doing some QA work and basically managing the community. But that's all as far as money is concerned. And everything else comes from contributions from the individual institutions.
Hey, Olaf, this we've talked a lot about this kind of academic use for Opencast. Is this something that would be usable in other scenarios as well? Let's say another open source project wants to put demos out about using their software and maybe some educational or just demonstration videos. Is this a tool that they might reach for as well?
I would say yes, because we're not sort of reinventing video management for academic purposes. I mean, we're making use of standardized software like FFmpeg, for example, which is something that anyone who's dealing with audio and video should be familiar with, at least when you're thinking open source. And obviously, if you take away the part where we're scheduling stuff in the classroom, the process is similar to someone who's hosting a couple of videos for a gaming site or for any other project. So I think that's the general idea, that you can use this beyond academia as well.
Now, one of the things that, the two big sites that come to mind for something like this are YouTube and Twitch. And one of the things that they have integrated into them really well is the support for advertisement. Does Opencast have any sort of advertising? I'm guessing no, but I'm just curious. Is there any sort of plugins for advertisement if somebody wanted to literally roll their own YouTube and try to make money on it?
Well, I wouldn't know. I have to ask the committer, obviously. But I would say no, because in academia, it doesn't make sense yet. I'm not saying it won't be something that we will do in the future, but Lars can hopefully confirm.
I would say there's nothing that really is dedicated to advertisement, though you could probably misuse a couple of features. So there are features which generate nice intro videos or cover art and stuff like that. And obviously you could replace a cover art with advertisement if you want to. And then this whole project is basically a lot of different microservices and a lot of different players and player components. And for example, the players do have plugin capabilities. So if you really want to, you could probably spend the time to actually add the plugin, which just adds some advertisements. That should be really easy to do. And probably if you want to invest in this, and I mean, you're making an investment here, if you want to use it for advertisement, you could probably do that with relatively little work to do. But
and
right
does it, Lars, does it work with our license?
Sure. Yeah. It's ECL, so Education Community License version 2, which is more or less the Apache 2 license with a few very small changes when it comes to pattern restrictions. So yeah, you can use it as you want to. You don't even have to contribute back. So of course, we are always happy if you do that, but you can use it for any commercial use if you want to.
So Lars, let me ask you this. Is there support in Opencast for actual live streaming, or is this everything record to disk and then play back?
Yes and no. So Opencast does not come with a streaming server. So you would need that. But Opencast does have integrations for streaming servers. What most people are using is actually Wowzer. I mean, Wowzer is one of the biggest on-premise streaming servers. And Opencast has an integration in that. So if you want to live stream it, you can hook that up to browser, you can schedule it automatically, and it will then automatically start the streaming as well. There's some experimental usages with Nginx. So there's Nginx Pro, which has a streaming server, but there are also some Nginx plugins which have a streaming server. And if I remember correctly, then Harvard TCE is using Akamai together with Opencast as a streaming service. So yes, but if you just install Opencast out of the box, you won't have a streaming server. You can hook up a streaming server.
Okay, so not something that's baked into it. So that's very interesting to me, because I back several years ago looked through a bunch of the open source kind of video management systems trying to find one that would actually work for live streaming, and you very quickly find out that is a very difficult problem to solve.
Yes, it is. And so, I mean, like with a lot of the other stuff, Olaf already mentioned that we are not doing a lot of video processing ourselves, but we're using other software which does it for us. So we have been using a GStreamer in the past. Nowadays, we are mostly using FFmpeg. And the same goes for streaming as well. So we try to integrate into other tools. Well, there are very good other tools for this out there, which aren't very nice to handle if you have to handle them manually. But so we try to integrate into that so we can kind of automate that. And that's more or less our idea. Don't reinvent the wheel every time, but use what's there and be nice and integrate into that.
Certainly. What codecs does Opencast use by default, and then kind of bolted onto that, what browsers are supported?
Well, I've no idea if you ever had a look at FFmpeg. If there's a codec out there, you can bet that FFmpeg does support it. And since we're using FFmpeg, well, we support everything basically. So I don't know, if you want to have some old real video codecs right now, you can probably have that. But if you want some modern, I don't know, the defaults or the default settings Opencast comes with nowadays are still H.264. H.265 did not get so much attention, so you can use that if you want to, but most institutions don't do that because it still has a little bit less support than H.264. And for a lot of the slide recordings, it doesn't have that much of an advantage over that. And I think most people are now waiting for the AV1 codec to come out and to be actually usable. But in the past, there were Flash Video, which has been in use for quite a while. And if you want to, you can still use it. And you can use the other 100 codecs along if you want to. And, going for the browser factor, nowadays, if you use H.264 and only H.264 with AAC audio, that's covering most of the browsers. There are very few browsers which do not support this. Essentially, I think they're only on Linux, and it's just Chromium on Linux if you don't have a certain set of codecs installed or something like that. But if you want to cover that as well, you can also use or encode as well WebM. And if you do that, you basically have everything. Well, maybe not V3M or something like that, so not the command line browsers, but everything else, everything that can display videos. But again, most people don't do that because H.264 actually covers 96% of all browsers, and that is 96% of all browsers if you have a lot of Linux users. So they don't bother, but you can if you want to.
And with all of these codecs, is there patent issues that you guys have found and run into? I know back, and again, it's been years since I've dived into this, but some of those codecs were covered by patents. And if you were going to, create more than X number of videos a year, you had to pay some royalty off to someone in Los Angeles or whatever. Is that something you've run into?
It's a very complicated topic. And the first thing I should say at this point is that I'm not a lawyer. So this is done the legal stuff. And the interesting thing around this is that it's kind of difficult to say, because it's also different in some countries. So there's no real hard line where you say, okay, that's something you have to pay for, that's something you don't have to pay for. So you kind of have to figure that out for yourself. In most cases, you should stay on the limit, or under most limits. So, so in most cases you don't have to pay, but there can be some edge cases where you need to look into this.
Well, Jonathan, I want to let you to keep asking questions, but I have an important message to read. This episode of Floss Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV. IT changes every day, and the most successful IT pros are constantly learning. Are you ready to start or advance your IT career? Skip the boring slideshow snooze fest and level up with effective and entertaining IT training from IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV offers over 4,000 hours of binge-worthy, on-demand training, from CompTIA and Cisco to EC Council and VMware. They're live every day, and content goes studio to web in 24 hours. Your team can stream IT Pro TV's courses live and on-demand worldwide via Chromecast, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, PC, or their iOS or Android apps. There's no need to leave home for training. IT Pro TV is having a big special. Their video-only subscription, standard membership, is listed on their site as just $29 per month. It's usually $57. Plus, you can use the code FLOSS30 and save an additional 30% off, which means you can get started in IT or advance your career, all for about $20 a month. 2019 is the perfect time for you to start your new life, your new career in IT, or to get that certification that you've been missing. Take advantage of this opportunity. It's their biggest sale yet. Visit go.itpro.tv/floss to get started with IT Pro TV. Use the code FLOSS30 to receive 30% off for the lifetime of all active subscriptions. That's go.itpro.tv/floss and use the code FLOSS30 for 30% off of all individual and team subscriptions. IT Pro TV, flexible training, binge-worthy content, life-changing results. And we thank IT Pro TV for their sponsorship of Floss Weekly. So, we haven't talked at all about the architecture of this. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. I think some of them are written in Java. How does it all fit together?
So Java is a backend. It's an OSGI infrastructure, if you ever heard about that. So as a basis, we're using Apache Karaf. And then on top of this, or in this OSGI infrastructure, there are, I would have to count them, but I think about 180 microservices involved. Wow. And you don't need all of them always, but they are usually stuck together for you in some distributions. And this actually means that Opencast can very easily be installed either on a single system or in a distributed way. And if you talk about video coding, which, does require a lot of processing power, then you easily run into something where you actually want to have a distributed system with more or less dedicated workers. All of this, and I think I have no idea who made the decision back in the early days, but one of the really good decisions was that all of these services have REST interfaces. And all of these interfaces, they talk via REST. So you can easily hook up front ends. And a couple of years ago, for example, we completely replaced our old admin interface, which looked, not that nice. Let's put it this way. With a new one, and we had all these REST interfaces, so this could easily be done. So it's mostly a backend Java with this OSGI microservice architecture. In the front end, there's JavaScript. Currently, the admin UI uses is an AngularJS application. The media module, so it's basically the portal, is currently a backbone implementation. And yeah, the players use different. I've actually no idea what the players use. I'm not that much of a player developer. There are actually also multiple players you can use and select from. Yeah, so that's the infrastructure. And then for storage, well, usually we have some kind of network storage for the videos because, well, you are shuffling a large amount of data around, so it's easier to have some kind of network storage instead of pulling all of this down from one node to another via HTTP. Though you can actually do that if you want to, but basically no one does. And then we usually use MySQL, or rather a MariaDB database for the main storage of all the metadata. And for the front end, we still have we still have two different search index solutions. We have Solr in there, and we have Elasticsearch, and we're slowly migrating from Solr to Elasticsearch. So Solr is electricity, Elasticsearch is new search index.
Yep. Use both of those as ZipRecruiter, so I'm familiar with both of those. So that sounds like a lot of moving parts. You said you're not an expert in all of that. So how large is your development team?
Good question. And it's kind of hard to say because you have a lot of institutions involved in this and a lot of people involved in this. So it's hard to say exactly how many people do contribute. I think the core team of committers right now are about 12 people,
okay, more or less.
And then there are a lot of one-time contributors or contributors with, 10 or 15 commits per year or something like that. So they fix small stuff if they have problems with this. There are a couple of companies involved in this as well. In a way, the organization I work for, we do some contract work which involves development of Opencast. But there are some other companies as well involved, and they contribute to the project. And in the end, we have, I've just looked that up, last year, so in 2018, we had 631 pull requests. Wow. For this project, for example. So there are a lot of things which get attention. And it's sometimes hard to manage. Yeah, that's true. But then the really nice thing about these microservice architectures is that you don't have to know everything about the whole project, but you can work on the one feature or the one service that you're interested in, and you can get familiar with that one and then work on that and don't have to know everything. But from time to time, we also have kind of the architectural crowdfunding campaign, which has worked out quite well in the last couple of years. So it's hard for one institutions to talk their management into sticking a lot of money into something which doesn't produce any features, but just basically does the exact same thing as before, just with a newer infrastructure. So we've tried starting crowdfunding campaigns where everything gives a little bit of money for that. And that has worked out quite well. For example, starting last year, which is still going on right now, we've tried upgrading a lot of these basic libraries. For example, we were still on Elasticsearch 1, which is kind of old. At least the last release of the 1X branch was, I think, in 2017. So it wasn't that bad, but still, usually it's hard to get a specific person or specific institution to work on that. And as a community, we managed to fund the upgrade for that to the current version, which is then now 6 point something.
Cool. And by the way, the title I give myself at ZipRecruiter for doing that sort of architectural redesign and things is Technical Debt Collector. So it's my job is to go in and get rid of all the technical debt. So that's my job there. So there's a lot of people involved in this. How do you coordinate like the roadmap? Who decides what's in the next release?
Well, that's usually very. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Well, that's typical. That's me from the board, and that's him from the committers end. And now we'll see who actually decides, and that's committers, of course. Please go ahead, committer.
Okay. So there is actually no real decision before. So there is no real roadmap, I would say, as a committer. Yes, I know there is a roadmap, and the roadmap basically consists of asking around what people are working on right now, but we don't put any specific features on specific releases. We have done that in the past with kind of horrible results. So we were waiting for one specific feature to get finished with one release, and we've waited and waited and waited, and half a year later it still wasn't ready. But other features had been developed by then, and well, we've promised this one feature in this release and not the others. They should go in the next release. So, well, we couldn't really put them in because they were also conflicting, and that, well, didn't really work out. So at some point we decided to have 2 releases a year. One is usually in mid-June, one is in mid-December. So the last one has just come out half a month ago. And then approximately 2.5 months before that, we do have a feature freeze. And everything that gets in as a feature until then, that's in the next release. And we had a long debate about this, if we really should do that or if we shouldn't. And in the end, I think everyone now is very happy with this approach, because it means that when the new timeline is until when you have to get your feature ready if you want to have it in the next release. So everyone can plan that. Adopters also know once the new release will come out. And usually you would also at least know 2.5 months before the release what new features are included in the release, though you actually often know that beforehand because people are in the community talking about these features. They want to put it in, and usually they also know when they want to work on this and when they want it to be ready. So more or less, you know the roadmap for the next half year, so for the next release. And for example, I could even say a little bit about the new features for Opencast 7, which will be released probably on June the 15th this year. Even though, well, there's no real roadmap right now, just from what I see, what pull requests are out there and stuff like that.
So, yeah, and with this many moving parts, how do you test this? How much of your code is code coverage tested?
That's a good question. I've been well, at that point we called it QA manager for Opencast a couple of years ago. And when I went to the Opencast conference, one of the first slides I had is, this is our current code coverage. We have to get better. This means that we still have, for the Java part, I think about 30 to 40% code coverage, so test coverage. It's not horrible, but it obviously could be a lot better. The problem is that, especially for the old code, we have not a lot of code coverage, and getting people to write new tests for our code is very hard. Sometimes here at our institution, we have some students working on Opencast, and we can throw them at this and say, okay, please try to increase the test coverage by 2 or 3%. But then more is kind of unrealistic. But yeah, that's something we try to increase with newer releases. Especially since with the introduction of Git a couple of years ago now, we started doing proper code reviews for all of the new code. And right now, no code may be contributed to Opencast without another developer looking over this code. And this even has to be another developer from a different institution. So one institution by its own can get no code into Opencast, which is kind of a hard line we are driving, but which also paid out very, very well for us in the last couple of years. So looking at one adapter in particular, that's Switch. It's the Swiss Higher Education Network. They provide Opencast as a service for all of Switzerland. And they actually use the development version of Opencast for all of their customers. Of course, they do another round of QA on this, and they do have some developers checking and maybe some additional bug fixes that they do on their production instance. But they're actually mostly using the developer version of Opencast. And if you go to develop.opencast.org, you would also have a test setup of the development branch of Opencast, which is reset daily, and people can always try to use that and test that. We also have that for stable, we actually don't have that for legacy right now because of some infrastructure changes there, but we will have that for legacy in a couple of weeks again.
Cool. Hey, Olaf, I understand there's a summit coming up soon. Why don't you talk about that?
That's true. So we're basically gathering in Zurich in around about 2 weeks, January 16th, in order to celebrate our 10th anniversary, and also it's our annual meeting. And maybe also to answer your question about the roadmap, this is one of the meetings, the regular meetings. We have face-to-face meetings, obviously, where people talk to each other about what they intend to do over the next couple of months and year as far as Opencast is concerned. And then you find out that there's someone else interested in, say, for example, a new media portal or some solution for tape management of video archives, etc. And then you can see whether there's something that you might align. And meeting at these summits, like the one we're having in Zurich in 2 weeks' time, is vital to the community because we are obviously a global community. So people are meeting online on a weekly basis, I would assume, in particular when they are committers. But these meetings face to face with some additional social events are really important for that community to work together and to communicate in the way that Lars described it. If you can't rely on, say, the automated test procedures as much as you might want to, it's more important that the coordination and the communication is all right between all the parties involved in that project, and that seems to be the case at the moment with Opencast.
Olaf, looking through the show notes, I see a mention of the Apereo, I don't know how to pronounce this, Apereo Foundation. What is that? How do we pronounce it? And what is the relationship with Opencast?
I think Apereo is the right way to pronounce it. And we are part of the Apereo network, which basically is a network of both academic institutions and open source software projects dedicated to the use in academia in particular, not exclusively, but first and foremost towards academia. So what Apereo does is it helps decision makers in universities to inform themselves about open source solutions for their problems. So if they're looking for some authentication software, they might find that CAS is, for example, an open source project under the Apereo umbrella, and that Opencast is part of umbrella organization as well, and provide solutions for video management. So it's kind of one-stop shop for those in academic IT who are interested in open source solutions. And what Apereo does is it basically sort of organizes these smaller software projects in a way that there is a certain level of trust among them. So software projects, they need a certain health for you as an institutions to be willing to invest in them. So it doesn't really help you if you have a great software, open source software that helps you with a need you have at your institutions, if there's only one person behind that. There's a certain risk that you shouldn't take as a decision maker. And this is what Apereo, for example, does. It vets these projects as far as their health is concerned, so that IT decision makers can make decisions on the basis of trusting these software projects to be healthy enough to provide a solution, a software solution, an open source software solutions that institutions can rely upon for at least a couple of years. I mean, no one knows how Opencast is going to develop over the next, hopefully, 10 years. But at this moment in time, someone has looked at Opencast and has established the fact that this has a sufficient amount of contributions, a sufficient amount of committers in order for this to be a reliable project. And this is probably what you would be looking for if you're a decision maker in academic IT and maybe even in IT in general.
Olaf, thinking about that and looking back on the last 10 years, what is your feeling about competing with proprietary and other programs and pieces of software and services that do some of the same things that Opencast does? You seem to have carved out something of a niche there. And what has been the kind of the secret to that bit of success that you've had?
Well, I'm not sure whether that is actually the adequate description, but the point is really that it's really hard to compete, obviously, against someone like YouTube. I mean, if I have a infrastructure which is really expensive for my institution, I can only provide you within 2 hours with a video that you uploaded, or say 1 hour, and that competes against YouTube having the video ready within seconds, and that's obviously not something that I can sort of compare with, and people have to understand that. And it's hard to live with your service against that kind of service level that YouTube or Amazon can provide. On the other hand, there are requirements, and in academia in particular, that YouTube and Amazon cannot meet as far as privacy is concerned, as far as some legal standards are concerned, as far as your individual requirements are concerned. So, for example, if I process and schedule my recordings, then basically I want to connect that to my local syllabus, for example. And that's something that I cannot easily do with YouTube or with any other standardized video management solution. And this is probably the niche that we have found, that those institutions who do not wish to work with something out of the box, but who do have specific requirements as far as these items are concerned that I mentioned, they need something else. And this is what we're doing. We're providing an alternative to the larger solutions that there are out there. It's obviously not really visible as far as market shares are concerned, but it really is an alternative that certain institutions will look into, and in particular, obviously, those who need an efficient and a cost-effective solution as well, because it's obviously cheaper than the commercial systems out there.
There's another angle to this that we haven't talked about, but we've seen in the past couple of years with sites like YouTube. And that is, and I imagine that universities come up against this sometimes when they're dealing with controversial topics. And the fact that YouTube is kind of this black box as far as the administration of it goes. If there's some lecture that they deem to be controversial, YouTube has the ability to just say, nope, that's it. We're removing it. We're not going to host it anymore. Have you guys seen that as one of the benefits? Obviously, it's a benefit kind of baked into open source to be able to have control over your own product, your own media.
Absolutely. So if you think about for example, preserving your videos over time, you want to have full control over these videos, and you want to decide what format, for example, is going into that archive. And that's something that YouTube basically doesn't have that kind of an archive. And if you want to sort of remain on top of your videos, then you have to sort of host them locally. And that limits, for example, your ability to use these commercial systems. The other way around, if you see what can happen to videos in YouTube, and you mentioned the promotional and the advertisement and other stuff there, then basically having a sequence of music in any kind of video can sort of result in YouTube sort of removing that video, as you indicated, and that's also something you won't have with your own system. So these kind of implications of using a standardized commercial system is something that you can evade by setting up your own one. And I think that this makes sense in the long run, in particular if you think that at least some parts of the videos you're hosting are not only there to consume them for the tests, for example, like students are using lecture recording, but each institution will have a couple of videos that they want to sort of host for at least the next 10 years. And that's certainly something that I wouldn't trust YouTube to do for me.
Well, we're almost out of time, so we do have to start wrapping this up. But we haven't taken any questions from the chat room yet. I do want to take this, and Eric Duckman, one of our regular listeners, regular watchers, just got here and says, got here late. Did we cover the blockchain? So when are you guys going to add blockchain to this?
Never.
Thank you. Thank you. That is the correct answer.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Eric, for that question. So, yeah, like I said, we're almost out of time. Go ahead.
Okay. I've been to a conference you always wanted to go to, FLOSS, the Free Open Source Software Conference, and I've been to a great talk about blockchains. Someone who really could explain what blockchain is, and one of the key things he said is, it's so fascinating to me, and all of the solutions right now doesn't make any sense.
I can kind of agree too, and I think for about 3 or 4 weeks in a row last year, we had like 4 different blockchain things on. So people have been wondering where the new upcoming blockchain shows are as well, and we do have actually a couple in the queue right now. Anyway, enough on that. Like I said, we're almost out of time. Is there anything we didn't ask that you ask? I said that bad word. It's my cold. I blame it on my cold. Is there anything we didn't ask that we really should have covered this time? I'll start with you, Lars.
Oh, good question. Maybe how you would start with Opencast would be a nice question that's missing right now. Certainly, go ahead and contact the community. The mailing lists are very, very active, and getting help there usually is a matter of hours. Then, of course, there is the test service out there where you can just try out Opencast, look at Opencast, play with Opencast. If it breaks them, they will reset lightly, so we don't really care. If you do manage to break them consistently over days, maybe let us know that you want to do that. But even that should work. Then there's docs.opencast.org, I guess. It's an important link. It's a lot of documentation, and documentation has really gone up in the last couple of years. Yeah, and then finally, go ahead and meet us at not only on our own conference. So again, come to Zurich in 2 weeks, but you can at least meet me at FOSDEM in February, at probably the FrostCon in August. Media and learning is something usually a couple of Opencast people are there. The Chaos Communication Congress would be something where Opencast people are. And just shout out and tell them that you're there and want to talk about Opencast. And there's probably someone out there.
And Olaf, same question.
I think Lars covered it perfectly. So there's a number of places where you can meet us, and we're kind of a friendly community. So if you're in video management and if you're in academia maybe also, then why not join us?
Oh, and earlier on the website, I was looking, well, on the website, on the GitHub site, I was looking for an issue tracker so I could file bugs. I'm wondering, do you have a public issue tracker, or is it just amongst y'all?
No, we have a public one. It's opencast.jira.com. So we had a lot of stuff over at Atlassian Tools. Jira is the last one we're still using over there. For everything else, we basically moved to GitHub. So we actually only have been on GitHub since more or less a year.
Okay.
Yeah, but our issue tracker is still in Jira.
Actually, two more questions, because I got yelled at last time for not asking this. But for each of you, what's your favorite text editor, and what scripting language do you go to most of the time? Lars?
Most of the time, I would say Vim and Python. So Vim is something I've learned as a student and have been using ever since. And since I'm developing a lot of on servers, that's very helpful. And Python, it works.
Yeah. Cool. And Olaf, same questions?
Well, obviously, I'm in management, so I can only answer the first question, and that's Microsoft Word.
Oh, really? I think that's the first time anybody's ever said that. That's I feel sad for you, but that's okay. Anyway, hey, look, it's been a great show. A lot more people being exposed to your project, and sounds really like a mature project, and it's helping a lot of people out, and so I'm glad you guys got a chance to come on and talk about it with my audience.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. That was, I got to scroll again. Randal, how long have you been doing the show? And you don't remember that you have to scroll where the names are right at the end of there? That was Lars Kiesow, something like that, and Olaf Schulte talking to us about OpenShot. What do you think there, sir?
It's a neat project. It's one of the things about open source that we cover it here from time to time, but it lets people take control back. When you surrender all of your content off to YouTube has kind of been our whipping boy today, but they are the 900-pound gorilla in this space. When you surrender all your content to YouTube, you fall under their licenses. You
right.
Use their term of service. They have the ability to remove pretty much any of your videos for any reason, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And so it's actually really important that people have projects, that there are open source projects like this, like Opencast, that allow you to host your own, roll your own solution. And then it's also, it's great what they've done specifically for universities, which, is obviously it's the inevitable direction that the universities are taking, that everything's going to go online. And it's great to have an open source solution in that space that they can, look at and begin moving to. So really a super important project. I was glad we get to talk to them.
So coming up next week is Nextcloud. They'd been on episode 400 back in August 2016, but a lot has happened since then. And basically they're, think of them as an open source Dropbox. So you could host it on premises or in the cloud or whatever, but it's basically shared data, similar to Dropbox and Google Drive. After that, Terry, it's the new open source digital assets focused blockchain protocol. I told you we had one coming up. Yes, it had been architected as a merge mined sidechain with Monero. Oh, that's going to be a buzzword show. That is going to be just a buzzword show. Yeah, but I'm glad they're on. I'm always glad when I bring new guests on. That's always best for me. Just added to the list since last week. Magalix, I guess. It's a smart infrastructure by analyzing usage in containers and adjusting parameters. So it's basically dynamic software that's watching how well your containers are being used and will tweak the parameters under using some sort of fancy AI, which sounds real fun. I actually bumped into them at, what conference was I just at? The CNCF conference up in Seattle. So that was fun there. Zen, which we had on a previous show in May 2009. So that's quite a ways back. Yay. But Zen is a hypervisor using microkernel design, providing services that allow multiple computer operating systems to execute on the same computer hardware concurrently. Well, you guys know what virtualization is. Open source at Instacluster. They're a big contributor to Kafka and Cassandra. And they're going to talk to us about their contributions to that and how they're trying to return back to the community by providing some serious upgrades for that. And back on the schedule, and I'm so sorry about this, Aeon, and here's the other blockchain one. At the root of the Aeon network is a purpose-built public blockchain called Aeon One, designed to connect other blockchains and manage its own robust applications. Aeon One also provides the economic system that incentivizes interoperability in the ecosystem. So this is where Skynet comes from, I'm pretty sure. So they'll be coming up mid-February, I think is where that one is. If you want to know who else is coming up, twit.tv/FLOSS is the homepage for this show, and linked from there is what I call the big spreadsheet, and it has all my things that I'm working on right now. If you have something that you want on this show, talk to the community coordinator or project leader and have them email me, merlin@stonehenge.com. We have a live stream on when we tape our show, typically 9:30 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesdays at live.twit.tv. And we do take a number of questions from there time to time. Okay. Well, this was only one question this time, so that was okay. But it was a fun question. Thank you, Eric. That was great. I'm glad I got to sneak that in. You can follow us at Floss Weekly on Google Plus and at Floss Weekly on Twitter. You can follow me at Randal L. Schwartz on Google Plus, at least for now, and at Merlin on Twitter. Please go into iTunes and put reviews for this show so that other people can find it. Last time I looked and I searched for open source, Floss Weekly didn't even come up. So I have no idea why we don't come up, and we're probably the biggest open source software show out there. So anyway, whatever. I'm going to be at Scale 2019, or they call it Scale 17X or something like that, in Pasadena in early March. If you're planning on going there, please look around for me. I don't have any speeches I'm giving. I'm not a speaker. That's like a speech, I guess. I'm not a speaker. I'm just going to be there representing FLOSS because I totally missed the call for papers on that thing. So whoosh, dates just went right by. So I don't get to speak that time. Anything you want to plug there, Jonathan?
Just mention that you can follow me at JP_Bennett on Twitter. Been busy with the house, so nothing coming up to plug. But I was glad to be here today. It was a blast. A lot of fun.
Okay, cool. And thank you for jumping in and saying yes at the last second, even though I forgot to send out the request until Monday. That was a mistake. Well, I usually send it out right after the previous show, but we didn't have a previous show last week, so it really threw all my timing off, but that's okay. Apparently anybody can do the show, even with a cold. So thanks, Jonathan, and we'll see you all again next week on FLOSS Weekly.